Well, the candidates came out swinging last night, addressing a slate of issues ranging from healthcare to the conflict in Syria. But who came in on top and who was left behind? And was there any behind-the-scenes action?
One candidate who graced the stage for the very first time was billionaire Tom Steyer. In the spin room, he continued to make the case for himself.
Look, I have 30 years in the private sector. I think I understand in a granular fashion what makes countries prosperous, what allows them to share that prosperity across the people in a way that nobody else has. And I think I have an ability to take him on. He's a failed business person. He's a failed steward of the economy. He's going to run on the economy if he's not impeached and thrown out of office.
Interesting. Here to break it all down is Hill political reporter Julia Manchester. She joins us this morning from the site of the debate there in Westerville, Ohio. So, Julia, how did the two that we hadn't seen last night, who weren't on the stage at least last time, Steyer and Gabbard, how did they do?
Yeah, so it was interesting. It was Steyer's first debate, and it was very interesting timing for Steyer. Remember, this is the first debate since Nancy Pelosi and House Democrats formally launched an impeachment inquiry into President Trump. And Tom Steyer has spent the last couple of years fundraising with his Need to Impeach campaign. So clearly he had something to maybe brag about on the debate stage. But I would say he had a pretty good first performance. He had a couple of one-liners that he got in. He was able to talk about his experience, obviously fundraising and raising money for impeachment. But he was also on the defensive about his status as a billionaire and being able to connect with everyday Democratic voters. So I definitely think last night's debate was definitely a bit of a boost in name recognition for him, given it was his first debate and he entered the race just in September. Tulsi Gabbard, on the other hand, had a also had a very interesting performance. But depending on who you talk to, she might have won or she might have lost. She actually came out swinging, very much so, against the New York Times and CNN, accusing them of smearing her in past headlines of being a Russian operative, bringing up her past meetings with Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. So she definitely got a lot of attention there. And what I thought was very interesting on her part was that she was able to differentiate herself from Elizabeth Warren, and she was clearly trying to draw a contrast between herself and the other progressive senator. She would frequently ask Elizabeth Warren questions or turn to her. So I think that was definitely a moment that stood out to me. But the big moment with Gabbard, I think, was when, she asked Elizabeth Warren one of these questions and CNN cut in and took to commercial break. That got a lot of play on Twitter, with some criticizing CNN and the New York Times for the move. But, I think it just depends who you talk to on Tulsi Gabbard as to how she did.
Yeah, I did think that timing of that was a little bit interesting, and that anybody else, they probably would have let it go on. But, Julia, what about Pete Buttigieg? He's been quite a bit on the attack, not only last night, this morning. He's been making the rounds on the morning show. He's going straight after Elizabeth Warren. What's the strategy here, and what did you think about his performance last night?
Pete Buttigieg was a candidate that came in with a pretty high name recognition. Well, maybe not originally, but he very much shot to stardom after his campaign launched and got a lot of traction in the media. However, since Vice President Joe Biden jumped in the race and the field has definitely expanded, we've seen him sort of plateau in the polls, and he's definitely a mid-tier candidate. So this is how he can stand out and very much try to boost his own name recognition with voters and try to get more attention for himself. You saw Pete Buttigieg go after a number of candidates, including Elizabeth Warren, and we did see that coming. The morning of the debate, Buttigieg's campaign released an ad in Iowa attacking Warren and Sanders on their Medicare for All plans, and we once again saw Pete Buttigieg try to draw a contrast between his Medicare for All, who wants it, plan and Warren's Medicare for All plan. So that was interesting. We also saw an interesting moment between O'Rourke and Buttigieg, these two mid-tier candidates, and at one point, O'Rourke was criticizing Buttigieg for his gun buyback proposal, and Buttigieg hit back saying that O'Rourke had no place talking to him about courage. So that was a snappy one-liner. And finally, Tulsi Gabbard and Pete Buttigieg went at it on Syria. And I thought it was a very interesting moment due to the fact that they're both veterans and they're both coming at it from this very different point of view. So I think that entire exchange was fascinating, because we're seeing the two veterans in the race really talk about foreign policy and an issue that really isn't talked about too much on the campaign trail.
Yeah, it was interesting to see how that Syria conversation played out. Julia, give us a little bit behind the scenes, like who was working it in the spin room? What was that experience like? Tell our viewers what that's all about.
Right, so the spin room is where a number of the candidates come out and essentially talk with members of the media and try to, spin the debate in their favor. That's why it's called the spin room. Not all the candidates participate. Vice President Joe Biden has never been in a spin room during this campaign. He did not come out last night. Tulsi Gabbard did not come out in the spin room last night. I think that was clearly, or it seemed like that was because of her, could have been because of her feelings about the CNN and New York Times, or maybe her debate performance. So that was interesting. But it's good for candidates like Tom Steyer and Andrew Yang, who are very much trying to spend as much time with the media as possible. We were able to speak with Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, ask them a couple of questions. Elizabeth Warren was also in the spin room, and that was a fascinating experience because this was her first debate as the frontrunner. So she was really the candidate to get. So it was interesting hearing all of these different candidates try to spin the debate in their own favor and very much talk about their experience on the stage that night.
Mm-hmm. All right, Julia, thank you so much for all your hard work on the ground. Nice job.
Thank you.
Coming up on Rising, Warren faced her first round of attacks as the Democratic frontrunner.
Progressive Change Committee co-founder Adam Green shares how she did battling back against the other candidates. He also tells which of her messages he thought resonated best. That when Rising continues.